What's up, guys?
Guys, this is the Handlebar Podcast YouTube channel.
Welcome to our YouTube channel.
This is our YouTube channel.
Welcome to our YouTube channel.
Where we do videos.
For you.
Yes. Because we love you.
All right, two important things. Number one, the podcast is listener funded. So every donation, if you've made a donation, thank you so much. You have funded the podcast. If you have not made a donation, let me tell you, the Handlebar Podcast is donor funded. That's the term. Donor funded. We are donor funded.
It means you can donate to us
on our website.
And that's how we are able to make episodes.
Which is thehandlebarpodcast.com.
Yes. Also, we have merch. We actually have new merch. So you can check it out.
Let me get some.
Also on
Let me get some. I'll show it to you right now. Let me get some.
Yeah.
I can't show it and
we
talk.
have new. Yeah, of course. I'll hold it for you.
All right. So this is one piece we have. Wow. Check it out. Check it out. One of our episode favorites.
Handlebars.
Boom. And this one.
Can we open this?
Yeah, open it.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but open it. Why? Wait. Is that how you open packages? This would look nice in the summer. Wearing it to the pool.
Yeah, honestly, it's cool.
Yeah, it's fire. It really is fire.
It's kind of new for me.
All right, you can get this. You can get our classic merch, like our sweaters, mugs, totes, all on our website, thehandlebarpodcast.com. We're listener funded.
We're listener funded.
Wait.
How many times are you going to say
I'm just trying to say the two important things.
Bro.
Number 3, we love you. Thank you for listening.
We do love you.
To the Handlebar Podcast.
Welcome to the Handlebar Podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Handlebar Podcast. We are excited to be back in a new location. The OG4 in the room here. Elissa is married.
Yeah, I'm married.
I think this is the first episode we've done.
Congratulations.
That you're officially married.
It's true. Yeah.
So we released an episode after you got married, but we recorded it before you got married. Someone commented and said she has the newlywed glow.
Oh.
I was like, well, this glow is actually the wedding planning is coming to an end, but
yes,
now we're here.
We're here. So happy to be back.
So
yeah,
happy to be here. Rafi's here.
I'm here.
I just love doing these with you, bro.
Me too.
All right. Sorry. Let's jump in. All right. Today we have questions. We're not going to draw. I have a list of questions on my phone. We've picked questions. I want to say, kind of, if you're a normal listener, you know what I'm about to say. If not, number 1, welcome to the podcast. Number 2, you can submit a question for the podcast on our website, thehandlebarpodcast.com. That's thehandlebarpodcast.com. You can submit a question. We have, at this point, thousands of question submissions. I showed the questions the other day to Rafi.
It's crazy.
And he was like, what in the world? And then I sent them to you. It's crazy the amount of questions we have. So we have a list of 10 questions here that we picked from the list of 1,000 questions. And the question we're going to talk about today on today's episode comes from Eva. Eva is 18. She did not put where she is from, but hello, Eva. Thank you for listening to the podcast. And Eva says this. She says, how do you live with a humble heart? That's the question from Eva, 18. How do you live with a humble heart? So for today's topic, today's conversation, today's question, we'll give handlebars at the end after the timer, but we're going to talk about humility. So let's jump in. Let's do it.
Let's do
Eva, 18, how to live with a humble heart. Sir Beth has her timer, so if you want to start it, we'll jump in.
Starting now.
Who wants to start us off?
I'll start by saying that the best teaching I think I have ever heard on humility was you when I was in USM.
Okay, that's the best teaching I've ever heard on humility, and I have got to give honor where honor's due, because I learned that from an Indian pastor.
Oh, yeah.
He was in town in the United States, and he was sharing to a group of us.
The truth comes out.
And he gave this analogy on humility, and it honestly, it changed my life. And I've since shared it at the School of Ministry. I've shared it a lot with young adults. I've shared it in leadership meetings. And just to give honor where honor's due, I did not come up with this analogy, but the analogy of humility, I wish I had a water bottle. Let me see your water bottle. It's not transparent, but if you're watching online, you can see this water bottle. If you're listening, you can't. But I'm holding a water bottle in my hand. And the way humility was described to me was if this water bottle was completely full, it would be humble. The amount of space that it was created to contain is filled. That's humility. And then I heard that false humility would be if this water bottle, I can hear that it's not full. There's space in there. meaning all of the space that it was created to fill is not being filled. That's false humility. And then if we were to take the lid off and we were to pour water into it until it was overflowing, that would be pride. How would you describe pride? Pride is filling up too much space. The space that it is created to contain, it's overfilling that space. And I heard that teaching on humility, and that I just right out of the gates, we're
crazy.
talking about it. But I think one of the biggest things that I have seen, I'll say millennials wrestle with, or my generation, I'm a millennial, and even some with Gen Z, I would say it's heavily hit millennials, is false humility. More than pride. I would say more than pride, we struggle with false humility, like not wanting to fully own the space we've been given to fill. And because we don't fully own that space, oftentimes we're not filling enough space, therefore you just have false humility. And that definition has changed my life when it comes to humility, because I know for me, I think we talk a lot of times about being powerful people. I know you and I have talked about that. We want to be powerful people. And what I have found is actually being powerful and owning the space God has given me to fill is humility. That humility is not passive. Humility is not weak. Humility is not... I oftentimes feel like when we talk about humility, we treat it like it's weak, like it's, a dog with its head down and a tail between its legs. That's humble. Be humble. That's not humble. Is powerful.
Yes.
Humble is strong. Humble is owning the space you've been given to own. But once you start filling space that's not yours to fill, that's where you would step into pride. And so, that's a compliment that you said that. That's it wrecked me too. So I don't know if this is your first time, if you're listening, hearing that analogy, but I would say we need more people filling their space.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think what I loved about that example when you gave it to me is it offended me at first, but I feel like I was taught my whole life to just be humble and serve, and just serve and put your head down and just be faithful and serve and be faithful and serve. And what I found is that worked okay for a time. But then whenever I was given space, I didn't know what I wanted to do, because all that was in my mind was just be faithful, just serve. And I hadn't allowed the Lord to awaken desire in my heart or to dream with him. There was no space for that, because I just thought, I'll just be faithful and serve. Well, what happened to me when I heard your teaching was I started to realize that I was in false humility by doing that, because I wasn't being myself. And so I wasn't taking up space that I was needed to take up. Yeah. And therefore everyone was missing out on who Rafi was. And so it wasn't until I went through that process of going to the Lord and saying okay, wait, who is Rafi? Who do I need to be? That I started to learn, wait, I affect people when I show up as myself. It's actually a good thing for me to show up as myself and not to just constantly be paying attention to what do I need to be, or who do I need to be? It's actually false humility. And I rob everyone from who I am.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Think of, just on a leadership context, think of every leader in whether the church, not the church, but if we filled our space that we are called to fill, that we weren't afraid to fill that space. We knew God has called me to fill this space, and I'm going to fill it. Think about the amount of clarity that would bring, the amount of direction. I just feel like so many times it's in the name of being humble, oh no, I'll pass up on that opportunity, or
exactly.
No, I won't.
Which is it's dishonest. It's me trying to be someone else. And so if I'm showing up, but I'm not showing up as me, and I'm trying to perceive what do I need to be for this, then I'm actually trying to be someone else, which is dishonest. I'm actually showing up it's a way of lying, because you're not actually showing up as the real you and being honest. One of another teacher that we had said humility is agreement with the truth.
That's so good.
And I love that, because it works whether there could be an area that I'm not good in, and pretending that I'm good in that area is still dishonest. But humility would say, actually, that's an area that I could grow in, where if I know that I actually am good at something, where I've spent time developing in another area, I feel totally fine saying, actually, I can handle that. I'm good. I can do this. And I don't have to be like, oh no, like all glory to God. All glory goes to God anyway, no matter what you say. You don't need to say glory to God. You could just say like, thank you. Someone is just
God, brother.
recognizing how awesome God
made you. It's such an awkward response. I used to do it for years, and people just look at you like, I was trying to give you a compliment, but okay. You know, it's like, it just makes the whole situation so awkward.
Yeah. And it's not honest. It's
not honest.
It's
I love
not
how
honest.
you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so good. I was talking to a friend the other day, and she said this in like a passing comment, but she was like, humility is so subconscious. She's like, once you're aware of it, it's now pride.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy.
You know, so it's like humility, if you're thinking about it, you're lying. You're either in false humility, which is a form of pride, or you're being prideful, over compensating. And when she said that, it was like a knife to the heart, you know, where it's like, oh my gosh, it's actually more subconscious, a way of becoming and just being yourself. Like when you're truly yourself, you're not thinking about who you have to be. You know, like false humility and pride is consistently, you're comparing yourself. You're having to think about what you're doing.
Yes.
When true humility is like a pure response of you just being who you are. And that like wrecked my world, where it was like so subconscious.
Yes.
It's like the fruit of the character that's being formed in you, rather than an attitude that you have to take on. And I've been blown away since that.
That's so crazy. I'm just thinking, because then that makes every other way a shortcut. The only way to do it is to like submit yourself to God and let him form that in you.
Yeah.
Because every other way is just, okay, well, if I can, it's a shortcut.
Yeah.
Okay, when you said submit yourself to God and let him do that through you, that reminded me of James 4. This is one of my favorite passages on humility. Starting in verse 6, it says, and he gives grace generously. As the scriptures say, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So humble yourselves before God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come close to God, and God will come close to you. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, for your loyalty is divided between God and the world. And then you skip down a little bit more on verse 10. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up in honor. And I feel like in that process of humbling myself before the Lord, it's also the same process of purification and letting him refine
Yes.
me. Because we're not perfect. Like we have to go to him. That's why I love that it says, come close to him, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. So you're like, how do I become humble? Draw near to God.
Hang out with Jesus.
Let him expose whether it's pride, false humility, whatever. And then just trust that he's going to purify you in the process.
Yes.
I don't think it's an overnight thing. I think it's a continual draw near to God. He will draw near to you. Humble yourself before him, and he will honor you. I love James 4.
It was the prideful that never
wasn't
allowed
messing
themselves to get close to Jesus.
Yeah.
Like in the Gospels. Like if you think about it, it was...
They thought they knew everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't approach him. They couldn't approach the Messiah. They couldn't, like, other than Nicodemus, right? You see him come in the dead of night, and he wants to speak with Jesus. I think he was leaning in.
But you saw in The Chosen that he didn't make it. He was like, I'll sow into your ministry, but...
Wait, what happens in The Chosen?
I'm sorry.
Not The Chosen.
That's all. It also is in the Bible, but
I don't think I've seen this
he like
episode.
Nicodemus had to come under the cover of night. There was this barrier
Yes.
for people who had like a reputation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love The Chosen.
In The Chosen, he is like in a struggle. Am I gonna leave everything and follow Jesus or not? And he's like, I don't know. He's like around the corner or something. And
I think even talking about The Chosen, I feel like is a perfect segue. Is I feel like in the Christian world, Kanye said it perfectly. What are the Christians saying about
they'll
you?
be the first ones to judge
you. And I think about
So
the
true.
reality of The Chosen is if you watch The Chosen, I'll say it like this. Someone commented on a post on social media, and they tagged me in it, and they said, Aaron, what do you think about the TPT, the Passion Translation? And I responded, and I said, well, if you approach it with wonder, it'll spark wonder if you let it, is what I said. Well, then all these people started commenting and they were like, well, all the things trying to discount the Passion Translation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are we so quick to throw stones at things instead of leaning in and finding God in them?
I think humility in that moment would be like, well, I don't really know where that translation came from. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I don't have to have an opinion, and I'm not gonna badmouth it, because it's like when you start to just give your opinions, like you just said, it's pride.
But the point I'm trying to make is it's the pride in that keeps you from receiving from the Passion Translation.
Oh,
it's
totally.
the pride in that keeps you from receiving from the Chosen. Like
Pride.
you brought up the Chosen, so I started thinking about the amount of people who are conversations I've heard of, well, the Chosen brother.
That feels almost like childlikeness or like curiosity.
I think you said it right when you
Find
said
Jesus
pride. What did you say? Pride will rob you from receiving.
Pride will keep you from drawing near to Jesus.
Wow.
It will keep you from receiving from him. It will keep you from knowing him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through other people,
through other resources, through other places.
Yeah.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard, it's probably one that many of us have heard, but it's chew the meat and spit out the bones.
Yeah.
I think of that and I think of humility.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
of
it's like the parable of the wheat and the tares. Like Jesus even says to do that. Where he said, chew up the meat and spit out the bones, the wheat and the tares.
Yeah.
He's like, he goes in and there's wheat and there's tares, and it's like the same.
But I think of like
same
times
idea.
I've heard people say like, oh, I don't like listening to that speaker because da-da-da-da. And it's like they have some really powerful revelation.
Yeah.
They have really powerful perspectives.
It's probably what one of the Pharisees would have said.
But it's pride that keeps us from
That's
receiving Jesus.
Right?
Right.
Self-righteousness.
Yeah.
So,
I remember when I got to go on tour, and I remember Sarah Beth, I've talked to you about this, but our church is very expressive. Like there's dancing, there's flags, there's shouting, like we lift our hands, we sing very loud. Like that's
Very loud.
We do.
Now she
it's a
knows
good
we sing
description.
Yeah. We're expressive. And I remember just going to different churches and seeing their worship expression was a lot different. And I could find myself being like, wait, they're not really worshiping. They're not worshiping like they're missing out on something that I know, blah, blah, blah. That attitude of like my way is the best way.
Yeah.
And I felt like the Lord was like, Elissa, like your preference is hindering you from my presence.
Wow.
And the humble can find me anywhere and anyone.
yes.
And
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, so just going back to that humility thing where I had to lay down my preferences, my own way. And I think humility has a lot to do with staying really teachable, staying willing to be flexible and to change, living on like wet ground. Like truth is truth, but like you're willing to find the Lord in anything that's happening. You're not like, so concrete. And I think that's what self-righteousness can do. You become so concrete in things that you actually need to be willing to, like, you know what? Maybe I could learn here. Maybe I'm not right about everything. Maybe my way isn't the best way.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, I hear so much of in your conversation just curiosity, and I think curiosity to me is similar to childlikeness, which Jesus commands us to be like children. Almost with this, like you're gonna miss it if you don't. If you're like the Pharisee, you're gonna miss it, but you have to be like this child to get to understand this kingdom. And what I hear and what you're saying is like the Bible actually says. By him all things were made. If by him all things were made and they consist in him, then anything is an opportunity to learn about him and about his nature. And anything you write off is like an opportunity missed to learn about Jesus and to understand the nature of God. Which it's crazy. It's like pride will have you pin God into a box. But humility says, I can look for God anywhere and see him in the sky, in the trees, in a license plate, or in a person that from a culture I have never
Bro, say
seen.
that again. pride will have you pin God to a box.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
But humility says I can find him anywhere.
Yes.
I know our timer went off. We'll move on to Handlebars Practical soon, but I think of, this is the verse I wanted to read. It's I'm in Numbers, but I'm trying to read out of Romans. Romans 12. I read this morning, and I thought of this question when I read it. But Romans 12 in verse 3, it says, "For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to, but to think soberly, as God dealt to each one a measure of faith. For as we have many members in the body, but not all members do not have the same function." Well, then later on, a few verses later, he's going to say, "Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion." And I think of that. I think of just this verse where Paul's writing to the Romans, and he says, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to. And I think of that, but I think of the story, what is it in Genesis 14:15, where Abraham is with Lot. And they begin to realize, okay, it says that Abraham had lots of cattle, sheep, servants, and then it says, and Lot also had lots of those things. And they begin to realize we need to go our separate ways. Like, we're getting too big. You know the story? And it says that Abraham comes to Lot, and he tells Lot, you choose. Look to the left, look to the right. You choose which one you want to go to, and I'll go to the other one. And it says that Lot looks, and on one side he sees desert, he sees dryness, he sees no fruit, he sees rocks. And then he looks on the other side, he sees lush, green pastures, water, like this beautiful landscape. And and then I just, like, he looks back and it's like dry, rocky, beautiful, lush. And he says, I'll take the lush. And Abraham says, great, we'll take the dry, rocky.
It's powerful.
And you think of that story, though, the blessing was on Abraham.
Yeah.
The anointing was on Abraham.
And he preferred
the chosen
Lot.
one was on Abraham. The promise was to Abraham. And in fact, God tells Abraham, don't take anyone with you. And there's a whole rabbit trail. But it says that he takes Lot with him. So somehow Lot ends up on the journey with Abraham when God tells Abraham, hey, take your wife, take your kids, or just take your wife. Actually, didn't have kids at the point. But go, and he takes Lot. But then he gets to this point where it's a fork in the road, and he realizes we have to go separate ways. If I'm Abraham,
you're like, I'm
the
taking
one
the
with the
promise.
anointing, the one with the promise, the one that God has called, and sorry, Lot, I'm going the green. But he doesn't do that.
He prefers him.
He does literally what Paul's writing about in Romans 12.
Wow,
and he
that's
says,
powerful.
do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to.
Wow.
But soberly, think of others. Like, lift up others. And he tells Lot, you pick. And to me, I think of humility being so settled in knowing who God is that you can pass up the green, lush pasture, and you can tell someone else, hey, you pick. You want the blessing? You take the blessing.
And the crazy thing is, God wasn't like, Abraham, you need to prefer Lot over yourself. Because I'm even thinking about, literally tonight, I was bathing Rosie and Shepherd after we swam, and they both wanted the same toy. And, Shepherd's like, mine, go away. He has this new thing where he's like, go away. And I'm like, oh, gosh. And then Rosie was the one who was playing with the toy first. And I had this moment where I was like, I could either control the situation or I could let them decide. Let's just see how this plays out. And so we're sitting there, and Rosie looks at the toy, the Batman toy, and she looks at Shepherd, and she goes, you can have it, Shepherd. And she gave it to him. And it's crazy because it's like, in this story, God's not like over Abraham being like, prefer Lot, do the right thing, whatever. It's just in his heart. And I've seen that in Rosie, that humility, kindness, sharing is in her heart.
And then it moved your heart.
And then it moved my heart. So it's like what Abraham did moved God's heart. And what he exemplified was humility.
Yeah.
That's so good.
My little life examples.
That's so cool.
Batman toys.
Batman toys. I want to jump into practicals and handlebars. Before we do, I wanted to ask you, Lissa, how have you seen, I think of you, I think of many people that are listening, many people that maybe are watching, and just the trajectory of God's storyline for you in your life of how just some of the favor you have had. Is not normal, is not fair. Yet you have found yourself in the midst of it. Yet, from my perspective, having a front row seat to your life, I have seen you time after time choose humility over a good opportunity, or choose humility over a measure of fame, or choosing humility over. I just have seen you continue to fight to go low. And I wanted to ask, maybe this could be a segue into handlebars, but how have you done that? Or what has God shown you for you to say, hey, this is better than that? I'd rather choose this path and go low than say yes to this grand opportunity or this grand thing. Or does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think it honestly goes back to the water bottle analogy, where I think at first I didn't know what to do with a favor. I almost felt guilty for it. And so it would be like, oh, I don't want to like outshine anyone. I don't want to overshadow anybody. So I'm like God had put me somewhere, but I was trying to give it away so that it was like a form of self-protection for myself. So it was false. I was like lying about what you were saying, the space that was given.
Yeah.
You know, or it was like, oh, like I'm trying to pretend it's not happening and trying to like please everybody around me. And so I had to learn, like, not actually filling the space and stepping into where the Lord put me was disobedience. It was like, I'm trying to shrink back when He is clearly like bringing me into something He trusts me in. And so for me to not trust myself there is almost like, sorry, God, I know better how to handle this than you do, you know? Yeah. And so I think I've had to grow in being true to how the Lord made me, and staying really close to His voice. Because it's not like I've just said no to opportunities because it would look good for me to say no to this. You know, like that's crazy too.
Yeah, that would be false humility.
Yeah, it's false humility. Yeah, or like saying yes to something because it makes me look better. You know, so it's like all of like the perception, the fear of man, all of that. Like, it goes back to kind of what Rafi was saying, like learning who I am and to be myself. And so anything that's like betraying myself with the Lord, I've had to say no to. Where it's like, if I feel that pull of like, oh, this would give me the notoriety that I want, I need to say no.
Yes.
You know, or, oh, I'm afraid of how this will look if I fill this space. I need to say yes. And like not making any decision out of any type of fear or pride. Fear, pride, all of that, you know? So I think I've had to learn to do that, where it's like staying true to who I am, who God has made me to be, and then stepping into the places that align with who I know He's made me to be and with the vision that I feel like He's given me, you know? So I've not done it perfectly, but yeah, you can't worry about how people are going to perceive you or judge you, because that's not your responsibility. How it looks to someone else doesn't matter. God is the judge. And I can only be true to the Lord and to myself. And I remember a friend of mine saying, my obedience for some is disobedience for others.
Yes.
And so she was saying, like, the Lord had asked her to make an album and to do a live recording. And for some people, they thought she was selling out. And there was a lot of opinions around it. And she was like, but I know what God asked me to do. And if I did everything based on how it made other people feel or what they thought, I would completely like miss out and not steward what God had given me. And so I think I'm still learning in places like how to show up as true to the Lord and as true to who He made me to be as possible. And deciding, you know, like following the Lord's voice and everything. And yeah, being 100% myself, you know?
So what would you tell Eva, who's 18, and she's asking, how do I live this way? How do I live with a humble heart?
Yeah.
What would you tell her? What's a handlebar for humility? We can go around the circle here.
You want me to start?
Yeah, you can start.
Pressure's on.
Pressure's on.
No, I think, I think for me, I would say stay really close to the Lord and let people know you. Because when you let people know you and you let God know you, you start to know you. And like, you know what I mean?
Say that again.
I think if you don't know who you are, you will perform. You will either be you'll overcompensate out of insecurity and try to keep your spot, which is pride, or you will shrink back and not want to outshine or really step in, and which is false humility. So I think it starts with identity, and be thankful. Be thankful for where you are. That will help because you won't try to go back to something you were in, and you won't try to move too quickly into the greener grass. If you're thankful for where you are, you end up filling that space better than you can in any other way.
Mm-hmm. That's so good.
Okay, those are my handy bars.
I'll say one thing I was thinking of is that you guys have both said identity is so important. I want to say they're both in the book of Hebrews, but Hebrews says to have confidence to enter the most holy places by the blood, and also to boldly approach the throne of grace. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes if you're bold or confident, people will say, oh, you're not humble. And I would say that is not scriptural. That especially those of you who are loud and get excited about things, I just give you permission to, you can be humble and you can be the loudest person in the room.
Yes.
I just feel like saying that. Humility doesn't necessarily look like one thing or one personality type. The other thought I'm having, I know I'm not really doing a handlebar, I'm getting to a handlebar, is I'm thinking of Philippians 2 as a general. If you want to look for what humility looks like, Jesus is our example of humility, who did not count his equality with God something to be grasped, but emptied himself and took on the form of a servant. Yes. What I love about that passage is it says he humbled himself to the point of death, even death on a cross. And if you watch Jesus' story, you watch how that was a daily humbling of himself, down to the Garden of Gethsemane, where he submits himself again to the Father and says, if there's any other way. Like every day Jesus did that. It wasn't like he made a decision when he was 6 years old and then never had to humble himself again. He was doing it all the way to the cross. And so I think looking to Jesus as an example of what this would look like is just humility is a daily thing and a posture that life will always ask it of you. There will always be another opportunity to choose humility. Yes. And I would say
you're not just all of a sudden humble.
No, it doesn't work
day by day.
Yes.
And it's fruit of how well you know what the Father says about you. It's fruit of like your sonship. Because Jesus never did it from a place of like reaching for something, but he did it from a place of knowing he was already loved. My handlebar, I got it. You read James in 1 Peter, it says almost the same thing, but it says in chapter 5, verse 5, likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility toward one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And I'll tell you this, you will not receive grace more than in a posture of listening and being open. And especially to an older generation, I'm very passionate about this. I feel that especially my generation has sort of taken on the cultural norm of canceling people, of looking for ways to judge first, like what Aaron brought up. And I don't think we need a Christian version of cancel culture. I think we need a Christian listening culture where we would be known for the way we listen to people that disagree with us, that we would actually know what they're saying, and that maybe we completely disagree, but they walk away feeling seen and loved. That'd be the greatest evidence of humility to me, is your ability to speak with someone that completely disagrees with you, and they walk away going, that person didn't agree with me, but I felt really loved by them.
What a powerful church that would be.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And so I feel like what this passage is telling us to do is subject ourselves to the elders. And I think that can create a lot of dynamics of feeling like, well, they don't really understand us. But that doesn't mean you have nothing to learn from them. And so I would just encourage you, be willing to listen. When you feel that first, like, I disagree with them, lean in and listen more to what they're saying.
Yeah.
That's my handlebar.
That's really good. I have two really practical short ones. The first one is, we talked about it a little bit, but prefer others. Just start making little choices of preferring others. It could look like something as small as who gets the biggest slice of pizza. It could be something as big as Abraham and Lot, which is like land that they're going to live on, you know? But just start making the little choice to prefer others and see how that makes you more like Christ. So it was prefer others. Oh, and the second one was try not having an opinion about something.
So good.
If you feel like you disagree with someone, or you immediately want to jump in and say something, try not to have an opinion. Try listening instead of being quick to speak. So prefer others and try not to have an opinion about everything.
That's so
good.
I want to land with a verse. I wanted to throw this verse out there and say, what do you guys think of this verse? But because of time, I won't do that. But it's Numbers 12, verse 3. It's Moses writing of himself in the middle of a incident between Aaron, Miriam, and Moses. Miriam and Aaron are frustrated with Moses. And Moses writes of himself, now Moses was the most humble man who ever lived. That's canon. The Bible.
That's gangster, honestly.
And so I want to say this. I think of that verse, and I think of there's a level in humility that is powerful.
Yeah.
There's a level in humility where I'm not there, and who knows if I'll ever be there, but there's a level that Moses got to where he was able to say in full humility, I am the most humble man. Like, think of that for a moment. Rafi's like,
that makes me like a little uncomfortable.
But the point I'm trying to make of that is that I want to say it again. I started out this way, but humility is not passive. Humility is not weak. Humility is not second class. Humility is powerful. And my handlebar for you, based on the analogy we gave in the beginning, but it's fill your space. I just want to say fill your space. If you're a student, be a student. Don't try to teach. Don't try to fill up too much space. I think of all the times when you're in class and you're like, you have that one person who it's like, I know you have this experience in this, but we're both students. You fill your space. If you're a student, be a student. If you're a youth pastor or a speaker or a worship leader, whatever it is, I think of worship leaders. Like, if you're a worship leader, like, lead worship. Choose a set list.
Yeah.
How I think of how many times worship leaders are like, well, I don't want to, you pick this. You're the worship leader. Like, pick the set list. You can get into the nuances. The point I'm trying to make is fill your space.
Yeah.
That's my handlebar. And watch how powerful that is for you. Watch how powerful that is for others. Watch how liberating that is for you. Watch how liberating that is for others. Fill your space. Don't fill the space that's not yours to fill. And just fill your space. So that's my handlebar on humility.
That's so good.
Yeah. I want to say today was a very special recording because Rosie was in the house. Do you want to say hi, Rosie? No. Maybe you heard her in the background reading books. It's been a joy to do this episode while she is here. So
she really wanted to stay up and listen to one episode.
We love you, Rosie.
We do.
You are the most humble daughter. Amen. Hey, if you're listening, we love you. I hope this helped. Eva, shout out to you. We would give a shout out to your homeland if we knew where it was, your home state, your home city.
That's okay.
We'll just say it's Dallas. Eva from Dallas. Go Mavs.
That's crazy.
We love you.
What?
That sounds like some Moses
Now
stuff.
you're
That was
falling
crazy.
into
I'm the
pride.
most humble.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right, we love you. Thank you for listening to the Handlebar Podcast.
Hi, I'm Maggie Berlander. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm a listener of the Handlebar Podcast. One thing I love about the podcast is how real it feels to me. I feel like every time I listen, it speaks into a lot of topics that I don't hear from a lot of other podcasts. And so every time I just am reminded how authentic it feels to me. And so if you love this podcast too, you should like and subscribe and send it to a friend, your family, your crush, all the people. That's it. Wait, no. Actually, I wanted to read that part. Yeah, because I think